There was a lot of talk in this year's NFL draft about the lack of elite quarterbacks or the lack of the amount of quarterbacks that many of the experts and scouts thought could make big impacts, not only earlier in their career, but throughout their career. We saw the Steelers go get Kenny Pickett. We saw Malik Willis go to the Titans. But the guy in the middle, to me, Matt Corral, may have the best chance of making the biggest impact early. And this isn't one of those takes where you just throw something out there. We've been talking about this for a while. We watched Matt at Ole Miss. We watched him grow under the tutelage of Lane Kiffin and Jeff Lebby, who's now the OC at Oklahoma while Lane stayed the head coach at Ole Miss. And some quarterbacks just have that it factor. Some people call it moxie. People call it awareness, swag, however you want to put it. Matt Corral can do a lot of things. His bag's really deep. He can make the throw on the out. He can throw the whole shot. He can lollipop the screen. He can throw the fastball and the changeup per se. But what makes Matt Corral different to me is he's not afraid to make any throw, but he also has the wherewithal to have a good feel for what's going on. He can diagnose coverages. He's able to read defenses like a Harry Potter book. And he can run when he has to. Now, he's got to be a lot smarter as a runner in the NFL. And it's amazing how the NFL has a way of teaching guys that. He'll be told before the season starts. But looking in front of him, it's really just Sam Darnold. Not worried about Dylan Cheek or any of these other guys. And Darnold, while he is a good player and has a chance to be a pretty good quarterback, tends to get hurt, tends to struggle sometimes. And all it takes is a little bit of that door opening to give a guy like Matt Corral a chance. Drew Bledsoe goes down, Tom Brady comes in. Now, I'm not saying Matt Corral is going to be Tom Brady, but there's many instances of guys getting injured, the next guy stepping in and doing really well and having a chance to take that job. Sam Darnold is not established in the NFL. He's a name that a lot of people know, but it's not like people are banging down the door left and right to get this guy. They really weren't banging down the door left and right to get Matt Corral. And I think that plays to his personality in a way that a lot of people don't understand. I think Matt Corral might as well have an NIL deal with Golden Flake while he was in college. He's got such a big chip on his shoulder. But don't be shocked if something happens to Sam Darnold, and I hope he does not get hurt, or if he struggles, if Matt Corral gets a chance to go in and steals the hearts and minds of Panthers fans and has a big game. And listen, we can use the old adage, he likes to eat. Well, that's why they call him the Golden Corral. Want to bring in David.
Come over on Matt Corral.
Yeah, look.
Yes.
And guys, listen, does Malik Willis have a chance eventually for the Titans? I think so, because I don't believe in Ryan Tannehill. He's got to be better at diagnosing coverages. We've gone over that a ton on the show. But Matt Corral could be really, really sneaky. I'm talking about this year. I'm not saying game one. Sam Darnold's going to be the guy. We know that. We understand what the Panthers have around him. But Cone, if he gets a shot, to me, Matt Corral is one of those guys that if you let him go in there and prove it, there's a pretty good chance he'll do it because, like I said, he's got that gunslinger mentality, but he also has great feel. I don't think he's a guy that's going to go out there and take stupid chances, but he will take chances.
The reason he was my favorite quarterback in this past class was because of his fearlessness. I think that made him a great quarterback. That can be dangerous in the NFL. So that's what I want to see. Can he still utilize his fearlessness to be athletic and throw on the move while at the same time not putting himself in danger in the NFL? Because that won't fly for long. If I'm Matt Corral, the guy's game I want to emulate is Russell Wilson. You know, someone who can sling the ball around, who can be accurate, but who also can move when he has to. You know, he's not going to be Lamar Jackson. He's not going to be Cam Newton, and he doesn't have to be, and he shouldn't be. I think you want to emulate Russell Wilson, be accurate, bide your time here early behind Sam Darnold, and I think you could start this season.
Listen, I wouldn't put anything past the realm of possibility, and a lot of people say, oh, well, the Steelers got Kenny Pickett. Obviously, that's a guy that they really believe in and taking him that spot. You got Mason Rudolph, who a lot of people don't believe in. Kenny Pickett is going to have a chance eventually, but I think Matt Corral may grab that chance more than what Kenny Pickett does. And I'll say this, and a lot of people, I don't think Zach Wilson's a bad player. Do I think he's the answer for the Jets? Maybe, if the answer is making the playoffs eventually. But I would take Matt Corral over Zach Wilson. And I've said that, and I've said that, and I've said that. I looked at the tape. We had Trey Wingo on here. He was a little concerned about Matt Corral's deep ball. I'm not. You go back and look at the tape. I mean, the dude's spinning it like Leo DiCaprio in Inception with the dreidel. Blaine, when you look at Matt Corral and you look at this quarterback class, Desmond Ridder, we know, went to the Falcons. You have other guys to talk about. I just think Matt Corral may end up being the best of the bunch.
I don't think you'd be wrong in saying that. I think the quarterbacks in this class were extremely tight. The group of the quarterbacks were extremely tight when it comes to skill level. There wasn't that.
What do you mean tight?
Like close together at skill level,
okay.
right? There wasn't that one guy who's just head and shoulders over everybody else. I don't think there was that guy in this draft. But I do think, barring an injury, I don't think Matt Corral starts this year for the Panthers. Because if you're the Panthers, you have a lot of other things you have to worry about to be a good football team. One, you've had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL.
And they went line heavy in this draft.
Yeah, you had like one of the top 3 worst lines in the NFL. Receiver, you have a young DJ Moore, who's going to be a good player. You have Robbie Anderson, who's a middle of the
vertical
pack
threat.
receiver.
He's a vertical threat.
And you have Terrence Marshall Jr., who's going to be a good player. But 2 of your best receivers are young. All right, and then you go to Christian McCaffrey, who can't stay healthy for a full season. He just can't. You can say the same thing about Sam Darnold, but one of the reasons why Sam Darnold's getting so beat up is because the guys in front of him aren't that good. I don't think Sam Darnold's a bad quarterback.
I don't think he is either. I'm not saying that.
In the first half of that season, he did well, but injuries started to plague the Panthers.
Yeah, so that's why when you say barring injuries, I don't think he can stay healthy. For the same what you said about Christian McCaffrey. I don't know if Sam Darnold can stay healthy this.
Yeah, but I don't think Matt Corral, depending on the injury, I don't think Matt Corral comes in and just completely takes the job. I don't think the Panthers have good enough guys around him for him to come in and just ball out. I don't think they have that. I think the Panthers, one, their defense is good but needs to get better. They did go heavy in this draft, but there's a lot of other things the Panthers have to fix before worrying about Matt Corral being the starting quarterback.
And I think they did a good job in the draft, and I do want to say this. I don't think it's going to be something where they go into camp and Matt Corral steals the job from Sam Darnold before game 1. I want to make sure that we understand that. What I foresee happening is one of 2 things. If Sam Darnold struggles, I know they had some good pickups up front. We're pretty excited about some of the guys they got up front. Sam Darnold has struggled to stay healthy. We talked about Christian McCaffrey. I think you're going to see the usage rate go down a little bit for McCaffrey because he's done everything from running the ball to catching the ball out of the backfield. They use him a ton. When he is in the game, he is touching the ball. And I understand why, but you've got to be smart for longevity at that position. Sam Darnold will force things. He will force things. Sam Darnold has a little Jameis Winston in him. I'm just going to tell you, if you watch, Sam's a more pure passer of the ball. I think his fundamentals are more pure. But he's a gadget type of guy a little bit. He's kind of an unorthodox playmaker when he's in the pocket. When I look at Kenny Pickett, I like Kenny Pickett. Desmond Ridder, I'm not sold on. Malik Willis, he's got a ways to go, but he's got the talent. He's got a ceiling. Matt Corral was the most complete quarterback that came out of this draft to me. Now, am I saying that if he goes in for Sam Darnold, that I think he's going to throw for 500 yards in the first game and 6 touchdowns? No, but I think you're going to see a spark. I think you're going to see a spark that Panthers fans say, wait a minute, this guy's legit because he's got that dog in him. We always talk about that dog, right? We always talk about it on the show, and it's a cliche or whatever. Some guys got it. Some guys just have it, and Matt has it. It's hard to explain. I don't think you talk about fearlessness. I don't think he's afraid of the moment. I don't think he's afraid of a throw. I think he is conscious of making stupid decisions, but I don't think that will keep him from trying to make the big play. I can just see it in this man's game. I can see it in his eyes when he talks. I know he feels like he should have gotten more pub going into the draft. You come from a system that can get you ready for the NFL and what Lane Kiffin does, from understanding leverage and spacing from the coverages, reading 2 high, knowing when they're going to spin to 1 high, reading the leverage of the corners, knowing if they're flat foot at 5 yards, it's going to be covered 2. The little things that I think separate him from Malik Willis, and then his arm ability, I like better than Kenny Pickett. I think his release is quicker. I think he's got more bite on the ball. I think he's got better arm strength. So I just feel like there's always that guy at this quarterback position that maybe a little bit unheralded that comes out and surprises a lot of people or catches your eye. In the first, game 4 or something, he comes in. Maybe it's trash duty. Maybe Darnold goes down because they're having struggling blocking anybody up front. And then you see that spark and people start to say, wait a minute, this guy may be for real.
And he's gotten knocked for Kiffin's system at Ole Miss.
I don't understand that.
I don't either, because I actually think it'll be a strength, because while he won't be running the same system in the NFL or with the Panthers specifically that he did under Kiffin at Ole Miss, he's still learning from one of the best quarterback gurus and offensive minds.
Yeah. And a lot of it is terminology too. So exactly, you're running a different system, but at the end of the day, the defenses are running similar things. So regardless of outside of if you're just a true 100% like Liberty. I know there's some similarities between Ole Miss's and Liberty's offense, but there's also some differences when you look at route combinations and what you're having to look at to find the destination where to throw the ball. Because just because I run a certain style of system on offense, that defense is running cover 2. I need to know what that looks like. They're running cover 3. Are there spinning coverages? Are they buzzing down late? I have to know what that means. Now it's just plugging in the terminology. And we'll move on after this. I'll just say, just like when I talked about Caleb Williams going from the transfer portal to USC, he doesn't have to learn anything terminology-wise. You're going to the exact same system from a terminology standpoint. Typically, the terminology is the most difficult part when you get to the NFL. You remember John Gruden talking about the plays, having to teach guys how to call in the plays because they're so long. So I don't put as much into that as other people will put into it. But again, it is a point, but I don't think it's as drastic as people make it out to be with Lane Kiffin.
One, Matt Corral will force balls.
Okay.
He did it in
Every quarterback's forces balls.
Well, you said that. You said that about Sam Darnold. Matt Corral will force balls. And 2, fearlessness in the NFL can get you in trouble.
That's what I said.
You in trouble extremely quick.
You play scared then?
I'm not saying that. You play smart. That's
you can play fearless and play smart.
I understand that, but being too fearless, and Matt Corral wasn't a guy in college who sometimes tried to do way too much on a certain play and get way too much. Yep. This is the NFL, buddy. It's a lot different. He's going to learn in that system. I think he needs to sit maybe a year, maybe 2 years, and really learn. And when he gets ready, he's one of those guys, if I was the Packers, that I would have drafted. That would sit back in a system with a guy in front of him that he can learn from and then go out and get it. This is entirely a new thing. It's going to be an entirely new thing for Matt. Not the same system. He's not going to be running as much. I'm just saying he needs to get a lot smarter with the ball. I love his arm talent and I love his attitude. But it's a lot different from going to college to going to play.
Yeah, everybody knows that. But again, look at who he had last year. 2 years ago when he was at Ole Miss, they had dogs out wide. Look at the numbers then. Last year, they had nothing. They lost Elijah Moore going into his last year, all right, to the Jets. Who did they have out wide? Who did Ole Miss really have out wide that you looked and said, all right, Matt Corral, don't worry about trying to do too much because you've got all these weapons around you.
And he's only 50% of the conversation. I mean, the other 50% is Sam Darnold. You know, I mean, if he were sitting behind Aaron Rodgers and the Packers picked him up, that'd be a different.
Yeah, it's a totally different situation.
But let me ask you this. Let's do something here. I want to start something. Set that line.
Okay.
Let's handicap here. Now, you said he won't start at all this season, barring injuries. But you set this line for me on over/under how many games it'll take before Matt Corral could either beat Sam Darnold for the job or takes it over due to injury.
Like how many games before he starts a game? I'd put the over/under at 7.5.
That's what I had.
That's what you had?
Yeah, that's exactly what I had. 7.5? 7.5.
That's good.
I had 6.5 and I changed it to 7.5 because I think 7 could be a good number there.
Hey everybody, if you like what you're hearing, go ahead and ring that bell. We're excited to be here. It's Crain and Company live 2 to 3 Central daily. Ring that bell. I want to hear it from coast to coast.